Deputy Director at Fleet Logistics Center, San Diego. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Mr. Jimmy Elkins, United States Navy, retired.
First off, I'd like to say congratulations to Master Chief Pizarro on his retirement from the United States Navy. And I want to thank him for the opportunity to come here today and speak about his early career. This means a lot to me, not because it's just the privilege of being here, but it's only fitting that I celebrate his transition from Navy life to civilian life. As I was there when he transitioned from his civilian life into his Navy life. To properly tell Master Chief Pizarro's story, I must digress to a time long, long ago. You see, even though each of us have unique Navy experiences, we all have a beginning and an end to our careers. Like the birth of a Navy ship, we have the birth of a sailor and the foundation that we build to support ship and sailor are the same. I would say that as we journey through our Navy life, it often becomes one. I started my career on a Fletcher-class destroyer during the Vietnam War. The Navy was quite different back then. The focus was on mission and not our most important asset as today, which we know is the people. I was lucky though because I had a chief that believed in his personnel, took me under his wing, and showed me what the important things were to attain a successful Navy career. He provided me with the foundation to succeed that followed me throughout my career in the Navy and even into my current civil servant job I have today. He taught me all the fundamentals to be successful, sometimes even when I had no desire to learn them. As I matured and ultimately decided to make the Navy career, I vowed to be like my chief and always provide a foundation for my sailors so that they would be successful as I had been. I believe that the measure of a man is far more than just measuring your own personal accomplishments, but rather the accomplishments of mentored individuals that have been tutored and mentored by you. From that perspective, I feel I have been highly successful, and Master Chief Pizarro is just one shining example of that. I am proud to stand here today and say that I was his chief, and that I was able to provide a foundation of success that carried him to where he is today, and hopefully into his next venture in life. Master Chief Pizarro's journey, although different from mine, started as mine did. With a chief, he took him under his wing and provided him with the tools to put in his toolkit for success. Some of those tools were easy to learn, but some were very hard as they came from life experiences, and I am sure that they shaped and molded him for this oh so important moment here today. Unfortunately for Pizza Man, as we affectionately called him back then, I am going to share some of his life experiences with all of you today. Pizza Man's journey began when he enlisted in the United States Navy, attending boot camp in early 1989 and Storekeeper 8 School in the summer of '89. I am sure at the time he thought he knew everything and he graduated at the top of his class. Little did he know the impact this would have on his career. He was truly a blessing and a curse. You see, at the same time he was nearing the end of his storekeeper training at A School, I lost my training SK3. This left Century in a real bind as we were rapidly approaching the commissioning of the ship on September 2nd of that year. In a few short months, we had to complete sea trials, LOE, and OPI, so that we could take a crew of 84 personnel, 80% of which had little to no sea experience. Through the Great Lakes, transcend the St. Lawrence Seaway, into the angry North Atlantic, and ultimately to the home port of San Diego. I called the school and talked with the instructors there and told them of my dilemma. I told them that we were desperately requiring their #1 person in the next class, as we would not have time to properly train them before sail away. I needed a quick learner, top performer. This is the blessing that I spoke about earlier. You see, as #1 student in his class, he was chosen to fill Century's critical village. At the time, I am sure he had no clue as to what that meant, but he soon would learn his fate on Century. Seaman Pizarro could not have come at a more critical time in Century's life. He had to acclimate himself to his new life at sea, learn all the critical systems and new watch dishes on the bridge and quarterdeck watches in port. Being the only Filipino on board was a unique problem for him, also having no one directly to relate to on board. You could tell that he was looking for guidance and mentoring in those early days, which was hard to find as everyone was being crushed by the demands of getting the ship prepared for its first journey at sea. For most, this would have been an insurmountable task. For Pizza Man, it was just another life challenge. During these import preparations for our sail away to our new home port in San Diego, Seaman Pizarro was a ball of fire. There was nothing he would not attempt and eventually master. He was a tremendous help to me and the rest of the ship as he put the task of getting Century underway above his own needs. He did this with no regard for his own struggles and needs at the time. But real challenges for him were looming on the horizon. His first real hurdle came when he heard the word passed on the one at sea, ship colors underway. It was at that exact moment that he was probably rethinking his decision to join the Navy. You see, he would not only get seasick, but he would get deathly seasick. I mean, really seasick. To make matters worse, we had a chief boatswain mate, George Dow, on board. He was also a Vietnam-era sailor who was one of the most vital chiefs I ever met. He ran the underway watch mill and held Seaman Pizarro's life in the palm of his hand. He had no sympathy for Seaman Pizarro. In the first weeks, I pleaded with him daily to have mercy on our new seaman, to no avail. I said he needed time to acclimate to the rocking and swaying of the ship. He said the only way to do that was to stand bridge watches and force his way through the sickness and the pain. I then told him that Seaman Pizarro is not Rocky Balboa and should be allowed time to come up to speed, but for whatever reason, BMC still had him standing underway bridge watches. Poor Pizza Man was now standing his watch with his new best friend, the plastic bag. I felt bad for him as he stood his watch. Even though he tried and tried, he could not shake the feeling and although he got better over time, he still was hounded by this uneasy feeling every time he got underway. I still remember the time he was storming the North Atlantic and he could not even make it to the bridge to stand and watch. H.M. Hill, our corpsman on board, had to put an IV in him in the passageway to get him enough strength to get him to the bridge. Chief Dow was still insistent, even though he lay there in the passageway, writhing lifelessly. He insisted that he stand his watch. But that day, thank God, HM1 said, "Not today, Chief. Not today." So Pizza received a reprieve on that day and did not have to stand the watch along with most of the crew. For 3 days, Pizza Man, along with other members of the crew, were secure in their racks, riding out the storm. For those couple days, a few of us stood the watches until he cleared the storm. Even though he faced this uneasy feeling every day, he still perceived and was still highly successful. I saw this as his quest to become a seasoned sailor, to be accepted by the crew, to be a member of Team Century. From my perspective, he was already becoming part of the elite group of wooden ships and iron men. Because even though Seaman Pizarro was one of the most seasick-prone sailors I had ever seen, he persevered and eventually mastered watch standing, even if he had to carry his little friend everywhere he went. He never let obstacles stand in his way and always stayed focused on the task at hand. That's what I admire about him, and this trait has remained one of his finest qualities throughout his career. And as far as Seaman Pizarro's seasickness, many that wrote us, from captain to the lowest seaman on the deck, would also get seasick. For example, we had a 30-year master chief who wrote us during refresher training that got seasick sitting at the pier. We hadn't got it away. I told Pizza not to worry, as in time it would get better. In fact, by the time we arrived in San Diego, LSCM Pizarro found a way to perform his duties even with constant seasick feeling. Don't get me wrong, he was still prone to seasickness all the way to being transferred from the ship. On this journey, we visited many fascinating ports, from Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin to home port San Diego. We navigated Lake Michigan into Lake Huron, through the Detroit River, where we were navigating, the ship turned hard right rudder in the Detroit River, almost running us aground. After investigating and finding out the problem, it turned out to be that every time we transmitted HF, the ship would go hard right rudder. We then transited Lake Erie, the 8 locks of the Wheeling Canal, and into the St. Lawrence Seaway, where we stopped in Montreal, Canada. We then transited into the North Atlantic and made a port stop in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and on to Norfolk for fuel and stores. We made a port visit to the Bahamas and transmitted the 48-mile Panama Canal, where late at night on Guyton Lake, we hit a deadhead, bringing us to our first real general quarters. General quarters in the USS Century was always fun, as it took the entire crew to man general quarters, whether it was modified general quarters or full general quarters. To my great surprise, LSCM Pizarro and the crew performed their assigned duties flawlessly. This put my mind at ease, as up to this point, I wasn't sure the crew would rise to the task. We exited the Panama Canal, did a short visit in Rodman Naval Base, transiting to Acapulco, Mexico. This turned out to be an interesting visit, to say the least. We had to have U.S. Embassy Mexico City fly out to Acapulco and provide cash to pay for stevedore services and fuel, as we had no dispersing officer on board. It was real fun carrying around a paper bag full of money, paying all the different stevedores and paying for the fuel. By this time, LSCM Pizarro had become a huge asset and helped me through all these difficult times. He had, without realizing it, became my right-hand man. We left Acapulco and transited to Mazatlan, where LSCM Pizarro was tested once again. While hiking with friends at night, one of our ET-3s fell from a cliff into the harbor, where we had to contract search and rescue services to locate him. Unfortunately for LSCM Pizarro, he was in the rescue boat that found the body and ultimately identified him as our shipmate. This made for a very somber transit, the entire crew on our final leg to San Diego for our homecoming. But LSCM Pizarro was not disillusioned. He carried out his duties with a smile and a can-do attitude, no matter how tough the task became. You see, he had become part of Team Century, the Sentinel of the Sea. Once in San Diego, we spent the next year tackling all the things that new ships have to do. Even though we were the second MCU mission, we were treated as the first class. We were treated as first class because we were the first ship to have isotope-French engines, diesel engines, and not Waukesha's. We survived shock trials, OBI, Z-squats, garden tests, where the ship was tested for its magnetic signature, and refresher training to its computer. Through each of these, now third-class petty officer was totally involved in key positions, such as bridge watches and fire marshals. He never shied away from hard jobs and responsibilities. For example, during all of this, he found time to study and learn the entire ship stem to stern. The knowledge he attained allowed him to receive his east-west pin in record time. Nothing seemed to slow his enthusiasm or face him in any way. Well, except for that one thing that had plagued him from the very first day. USS Century taught Petty Officer Pizarro the meaning of teamwork, value of diversifying your skill set, succeeding outside of your comfort zone, and to never say, I can't. When I was transferred to my last year of tour of duty, Petty Officer Pizarro came to me to discuss his future in the Navy. We discussed many things in our discussion, such as career paths, family, personal and professional goals, etc. He then asked me the most important question of his career. If you were me, and knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself to do to ensure a successful career? I paused and pondered the question for a few moments, being very careful with my words, as I wanted to provide the one thing that would make the difference in his career. Then it hit me. I said, Gus, if I were you, knowing what I know now, I would split tour for a large debt ship. I said, Gus, you are passionate, professional, dedicated, and a quick study. You are one of the best SKs at this stage in your career, anyone I've ever seen. Unfortunately, your Achilles heel is this small, rough-riding ship that rides rougher than any ship I've ever been on. I told him if he transferred the knowledge decks, continued his path to excellence, and never go back to mine sweeps, he would be a superstar. He obviously took my advice to heart because he sits before you today, a well-rounded, accomplished Master Chief Petty Officer. In summary, I can only hope that all the life lessons and personal and professional advice have been instrumental in molding Master Chief Petty Officer Pizarro's career. I'm sure that in his career, he passed on to sailors that one thing that resulted in successful careers also. I hope that one day he will have the honor and privilege, as I do today, to say a few words at a retirement ceremony about his pizza man, as I have today. With that said, I congratulate Master Chief Petty Officer Pizarro on a successful full career and wish him success in his next adventure, whatever that may be. And I offer you my mentorship as you transition back from the Navy to civilian life. Fair winds and following seas, my friend, to you and your lovely family. Thank you for this opportunity today.